A battle's being waged for the soul of the left. Far from Washington, away from all this drama in the White House, there's an actual debate going on in the Democratic Party about abortion and whether pro-life candidates ought to be allowed in the party. Well, a progressive group has released a statement of principles arguing that opposition to abortion is incompatible with being progressive. In part, the statement says this, quote, "As progressives, we stand united in the belief that a woman's autonomy over her own body is not a secondary issue or a social issue, but rather a human right and a necessity in order to attain and preserve economic security in her life." Charles Chamberlain is executive director of Democracy for America, which endorsed that statement. Charles, thanks a lot for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Flesh out the reasoning for me. Abortion's important. It's important to end your pregnancy, not to have a child, so you can make more money. Am I mischaracterizing it?
I would say that abortion, what we're talking about here is the right for a woman to be able to have the self-determination to decide her future, her body, her medical condition, and be able to make that decision with her doctor, and not to have the government make those decisions for her.
Right. No, I know the talking points, but where's the economic security part of it? That was the new. That's why I was interested. The new part about how it's key to her economic security. So she's going to make more money if she doesn't have the baby. Is that what you're saying?
Sure. Every time an anti-choice policy is passed, what happens is they make it harder and harder for people to have access to abortion. So what that means is that rich people are able to do things like take days off from work to travel far distances, maybe stay in a hotel, maybe even have to travel to a whole other state, while poor people are unable to get the access to the medical needs that they have. So what it means is when you create anti-abortion and anti-choice policies, then you make it much harder on poor people, on women of color, on constituencies that need to put together money to be able to afford the medical procedures they have.
To have the abortion right. What's interesting is that poor people have abortions at much higher rates than rich people. Black people have abortions at much higher rates than white people. So it wouldn't exactly seem to be working out the way you're suggesting. But in this statement, you've got a lot of references to women of color, who apparently need more abortions. And it just reminded me, Jesse Jackson always used to say that the abortion business targets black people, and that maybe that's kind of creepy. Are you saying that we need to have more abortions of black children? I mean, that seems to be what your statement is saying.
I think it's pretty clear that what I'm saying is that women should have the right to be able to make decisions about their own medical conditions, that they should have the right to be able to decide to self-determination what they're going to do. I trust women. I actually think that the government should not be involved in women's right to choose.
Does that formula change a little bit when the baby becomes viable? So, like, I don't know, at 22 weeks, Planned Parenthood offers abortions, a lot of their clinics up to 24 weeks. Child can live outside the womb. At that point, does it become a little bit more complicated just than a woman making a decision about her own body? You've got, like, this thing that can live. So does that become more complicated for you, or is it just a medical procedure over which the woman should have full control?
This is a great example of where, you're talking to a white guy. I'm not going to ever be pregnant. So it's not a hard decision for me.
I don't think my race says anything, or your race says anything to slow down. No, this is a question about the nature of it. And we're both adults, and you're a smart guy, and you can answer that question. Does it change a little bit? Men can weigh in on this, too. Men actually are half of the genetic material in a baby. So I'm a father. I know that. You may be, too. So I think we have a right to weigh in on this. I think it's okay. Is it a more complicated question if the child can live outside the womb, or is it not complicated for you at that point?
Sure. Sure. It's more complicated. It's something that has to be decided to question that women have to make a decision on that they make with themselves, with their doctors, with their God. But it's not a decision that they should be forced to make based by what their government says. And
so
when we
you have
outlaw the ability for somebody to make
hold on, because at that point you have an entity that can live on its own. We would call it a person. I think you would too, right? Child emerges living alone. That's not a fetus. That's not a part of a medical procedure. That's a person. So don't the rest of us have some interest in saying you're not allowed to kill that person? That's why we have laws against murder, remember? Are you tracking with me here?
I'm tracking with you. What I would say is, as soon as a baby is out of the womb, then I think we are talking about a baby. What we have is we have pregnancy where a baby stays inside of a woman for months on end. I'm sure you know how it works.
I do.
And the reason why that, right. And so, when you say that men are half responsible, well, men don't carry the baby from the point that it is a zygote to the point that it becomes a baby.
I guess what I'm trying to get to, Charles, is that you know, there are people who have real concerns, moral concerns about abortion that aren't rooted in their desire to oppress women. These are real questions. And when you spew mindless propaganda about choice and medical procedures and blah, 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 it kind of blurs what is a really important question, like, do you have the right to take a life? Do you see that at all?
I think what you're confusing is the question of who has the right to make decisions about their own lives.
So you're saying it's okay. So, but you concede that it's the taking of a life at that stage. If the child can live outside the womb, that's killing. Would you just concede that, or are you going to pretend it's not?
Once the baby is outside of a womb, then you have rights. You're an individual. Until that happens, you can't exist without being out of the womb. You're in the womb. You're part of the woman.
Unless
and the woman has to have the ability to make the decisions about their own lives.
All right. Well, just all I would ask, I'm not going to change your mind on the show. We got out of time. But just think about this stuff a little bit. I did. Charles, thank you.